He is working on speech project 7, which is research your topic. Well, this Toastmaster, in his early years of working, and worked in the service industry, working in the same restaurant for several years. And his speech today is about something that we do without even thinking about. Whether you take an Uber, whether you go to a restaurant, when you travel. We're going to learn some interesting facts about things that we just do out of habit. Our speaker's speech title is called The Tip. Please welcome up Mr. Alan Mann.
As Deborah said, we do it when we eat out, if we take a cab or Uber, even if we go on a cruise. One of the practices that part of our culture is the tip, or tipping. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, I thought of this idea because it's something we do every day, but very little people know about the history of it. I didn't know anything about the history of it. So I thought it'd be an interesting speech on why we do it. I want to tell everybody how it started, a little about what resources for tipping. There's tipping itself, or the practice of some type of tipping, goes back as far as the Middle Ages. Imagine if I was the king of the castle. I'm not, but if I was the king of the castle. And Matthew here was a juggler. He was providing entertainment to all my guests. At the end of the performance, I might throw him a little coin from the realm, thanking him for his performance. So it goes back that far. The Middle Ages and the Isles of England. Over the years, it evolved. At some point, if Hank here were to visit my castle, let's say in the 16, 17, or even 1800s, and one of my servants was asked to polish up his boots. There was a practice called the vein, and Hank here would provide a little thank you to even though it was my servant, for performing that menial task. Over more time, it became popular in pubs and restaurants in England. But like all things, we migrate across the pond. Between the 1840s and the Civil War period, as wealthy individuals from America traveled back and forth, they brought back this practice of thanking people, throwing money at as a way of showing how important they were, how wealthy they were. For, let's say, Wayne was a server, just to show off, I'm rich, I'm going to throw you some money thank you for providing a great meal. It worked its way into our culture nationwide, and at every restaurant and for many other services, people started giving tips at restaurants, taxis, and other services. There was a period, though, the early 1900s, a movement called the anti-tipping movement. It started in Georgia. And it was a movement they felt tipping was un-American, anti-democratic. And at one point, over 100,000 Americans took a pledge to not tip for a year. The movement sort of died out by around 1926.
I like that.
Like a lot of pledges, like a lot of resolutions. But the practice is with us today. And it's evolved even more rather than, say, Wayne deciding at the restaurant how much he wants to tip. The restaurant owner will add it into the ticket, or right there at the bottom, here are some suggested tips. Now, where do you get information on what is a proper tip? Well, there's Robert's Rules of Order for running a meeting, and there's Emily Post on etiquette. Emily Post is sort of the Robert's Rules of Order for etiquette practices, and one of the etiquette practices is tipping. And at the end of the meeting, I will hand this out, which is a list of just about every type of service on what they recommend. But I got to thinking about this as I was working on the speeches, like, where did I learn to tip? And where did you learn to tip? I couldn't find any hard data with statistics, but if you go back to Kenneth Seaway's book, which is where Trip Savvy is, which is where the website I went to, which references Kenneth Seaway's book, An American History of Tipping and Gratuities. It talks about that we learn from our family members. I learned, for example, from my father. I remember the first time I went on a trip by myself, my dad said, don't forget to, to tip the waiter, don't forget to tip the taxi driver, and he gave, this is back in the 70s, he said, taxi driver, just give him a quarter. My brother, when I met up with my brother who was coming up from Arizona, he said, and now Alan, take a look at who you're tipping. You want to give a tip, and excuse this comment here. The part of the history of tipping has to do that, for example, if you're as an inducement for the waiter or waitress to meet you after the meal. So that dates back again to the Middle Ages. So, but it's also a matter of your personality. Myself, I'm also influenced by the fact that I worked as in the restaurant industry, and I know people work hard. Most people who work in the restaurant industry work at minimum or minimum plus a little wage. And service is everything to me. I'm a buyer. And to me, service is everything. If Warren gives me great service, he's going to get a good tip. But if he gives me bad service, and we've had good and bad services at the various restaurants here over the years at OGU. I remember a couple of years ago we got terrible service. I don't know if I'm going to give him a really good tip. I was sort of puzzled where the word tip comes from. And it comes from a gentleman by the name of Samuel Johnson. He was an English writer. It means to ensure promptness. And that goes back to ensure service. And in a way, when I tip a cab driver, because I have this deal with the cab drivers about picking me up at work at a nice, well, Uber type rate, sometimes when they really do me a favor of running late, and they get me there in half the time that normally would take, I'm going to thank them. And I know if I give them a good tip, they're going to remember me. And when I need them again, they're going to be there. And this is important for all of us. So the history of tipping. to thank the juggler, to ensure promptness. But keep in mind, all of us have been influenced by many things, and it influences us. So we need to think about, when we're tipping, are we tipping wrong because we're mad at somebody, or they really deserve it? That's tipping. Not just in America, but a history and why it's important.